The struggle of the Amhara Fano, a fight for justice and freedom in Ethiopia. The ongoing struggle of the Amhara Fano militia against the ruling Prosperity Party, particularly its faction dominated by the Oromo People's Democratic Organization, OPDO, is one of the most intricate and deeply rooted conflicts in Ethiopia's recent history. Central to this conflict is the Amhara people's fight for justice, sovereignty, and protection against what they view as systemic marginalization, dispossession, and persecution. Their grievances are multi-layered, covering issues of land, historical territorial rights, mass killings, evictions, and the political dominance of the Oromo elites under Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's administration. Historical context of Fano in the Amhara struggle. Fano, traditionally a loosely organized militia, has deep historical roots in the Amhara region. It originated as a grassroots defense mechanism for the Amhara people against external threats, such as bandits, invasions, or state oppression. Historically, the Amhara people played a leading role in the formation of the modern Ethiopian state, yet in recent decades, many in the community feel marginalized under successive regimes, particularly during the years of the Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Democratic Front, EPRDF, and, more recently, under the Prosperity Party. Fano's role has evolved from being a localized defense militia into a more organized and assertive force demanding greater recognition for Amhara rights. Over the past few years, their struggle has intensified due to the increasing disenfranchisement of the Amhara people, particularly under the ruling Prosperity Party, which is seen as being dominated by the OPDO, now rebranded as the Oromo wing of the Prosperity Party. The rise of the OPDO-dominated Prosperity Party. When Abiy Ahmed, a member of the Oromo ethnic group, came to power in 2018, he introduced a wave of reforms that aimed to bring about political and economic liberalization. His vision for a united Ethiopia under the Prosperity Party, which replaced the coalition-based EPRDF, was hailed internationally. However, domestically, it has been a source of tension, especially among ethnic groups who feel marginalized by the new ruling elite. Many Amhara activists argue that the party's dominance by Oromo politicians, particularly from the OPDO, has led to policies that have systematically targeted the Amhara people, resulting in violence, land dispossession, and mass displacement. Grievances of the Amhara people. The Amhara people's grievances revolve around several key issues. 1. Land dispossession and territorial claims. A significant part of the Amhara struggle is rooted in historical territorial disputes, particularly in areas bordering the Amhara and Tigray, Amhara and Oromo, and Amhara and Benishangul regions. Over the years, large swathes of land historically associated with the Amhara have been incorporated into the Oromia, Tigray and Benishangul regions. This has resulted in the forced displacement of thousands of Amhara people. In particular, areas such as Welkate, Raya, Shewa, Metekel, and Vulo, which Amhara has historically inhabited, have become flashpoints of conflict due to disputes over land ownership and regional boundaries. The Fano militia has taken up arms to protect these lands and resist what they view as state-sanctioned land grabs orchestrated by Oromo elites within the Prosperity Party. The annexation of these territories has not only led to economic disenfranchisement for the Amhara people but also cultural erasure as historical Amhara settlements are reclassified under Oromia's jurisdiction. 2. Ethnic violence and mass killings. The most harrowing part of the Amhara struggle has been the recurrent outbreaks of ethnic violence, particularly in areas under Oromo control. Amnesty International and other human rights organizations have documented widespread killings of Amhara civilians, often with little to no intervention from the federal government. The Fano militia emerged as a response to these atrocities, acting as a protective force against both state and non-state actors who target the Amhara. In regions such as Oromia, Benishangul Gumuz, and parts of the southern nationalities, and peoples region, SNNPR, Amhara civilians have been victims of targeted attacks. Villages have been burned, families have been displaced, and numerous people have lost their lives in what many describe as ethnic cleansing. 3. Political marginalization. Despite being one of the largest ethnic groups in Ethiopia, the Amhara people feel politically sidelined under the Prosperity Party. They argue that the centralization of power under Abiy Ahmed's administration has concentrated decision-making authority within Oromo elites, leaving other ethnic groups, particularly the Amhara, with little political influence. This marginalization is reflected in the lack of representation in key federal positions and the limited ability of Amhara political leaders to influence policymaking decisions that affect their region. The Fano militia has framed their struggle as a fight not just for the protection of Amhara lands but for the political autonomy of the Amhara people. They demand greater representation within the federal structure and more control over their regional affairs, free from the dominance of the OPDO and the Prosperity Party. Fano's fight for justice. Fano's struggle is driven by a sense of historical injustice and a desire to restore the dignity of the Amhara people. The militia has framed its fight as a defensive one, aiming to protect Amhara lives and lands from external aggression, whether it comes from other ethnic militias or from the federal government itself. Fano's actions, though sometimes condemned as violent, are seen by many within the Amhara community as necessary for survival in a political system that has failed to protect them. 1. Militarized resistance. In recent years, Fano has evolved into a well-organized paramilitary group capable of mobilizing thousands of fighters. Their tactics are guerrilla style, often relying on the rugged terrain of the Amhara region to wage asymmetric warfare against both government forces and rival militias. Fano's primary goal is to protect Amhara communities from external threats, but it has also become an instrument of political resistance, challenging the federal government's authority in the region. The group's militarized resistance has led to numerous confrontations with federal security forces. These clashes have further exacerbated the tension between the Amhara region and the central government, with the latter accusing Fano of being a destabilizing force in the country. However, for many Amhara, Fano represents the last line of defense against a government they believe has abandoned them. 2. Popular support. Fano enjoys widespread support among the Amhara population, particularly in rural areas where the central government's presence is minimal, and ethnic violence is more pronounced. The militia has become a symbol of Amhara resilience, with many viewing them as protectors of Amhara identity, culture, and land. This support has enabled Fano to continue its operations despite attempts by the federal government to disarm them. In urban areas, Fano's popularity is more nuanced, with some criticizing their tactics as too extreme or fearing that their actions could lead to further escalation of ethnic violence. Nonetheless, the group's ability to mobilize large numbers of fighters and resources suggests that it has tapped into deep-seated grievances within the Amhara community. Government response. The Ethiopian government, under the leadership of the Prosperity Party, has responded to Fano's rise with a mixture of force and diplomacy. On one hand, the federal government has attempted to disarm Fano and bring its leaders to the negotiating table. On the other hand, it has launched military operations against Fano strongholds, accusing the group of being a destabilizing force and a threat to national unity. Despite these efforts, Fano has proven resilient, adapting to government pressure and continuing its operations. The federal government's attempts to disarm the group have been met with resistance, with many Fano fighters refusing to lay down their arms until the Amhara people's demands for justice and autonomy are met. Conclusion. The future of the Amhara struggle. The struggle of the Amhara Fano militia against the Opto-dominated Prosperity Party is emblematic of the broader ethnic and political challenges facing Ethiopia today. Fano's fight for justice, freedom, and autonomy for the Amhara people is rooted in deep historical grievances that have been exacerbated by modern political developments. Their struggle reflects the broader tensions within Ethiopia's federal system, where ethnic groups vie for power, territory, and recognition. As Ethiopia continues to grapple with its internal conflicts, the Amhara struggle remains a crucial part of the country's political landscape. Whether through armed resistance or political negotiation, the Fano militia will continue to play a key role in shaping the future of the Amhara people in Ethiopia as a whole. The question remains whether the federal government can address the underlying causes of the conflict and find a peaceful resolution to the Amhara people's grievances, or whether the cycle of violence will continue to escalate.